All right, guys, welcome back to the Pocket Mads channel. It's Maddie here. It is 12:30 at night. I'm coming off of our reveal, or I guess our opening live stream for Mega Shine, the new set that just released to Pokemon Pocket. Came out tonight. We did a nice 4-hour live stream. It was a ton of fun. I had a really great time. A lot of interesting opinions, a lot of questions. A lot of people don't know how to feel about some of the new cards that were released in Mega Shine. I'm going to tell you my thoughts on all of these cards and the entire set. This is a small set. It's a mini set. Definitely a collector's based set, right? Definitely a lot of really cool shiny Pokemon and new artworks and things like that. But yeah, 69 new unique cards releasing here in Mega Shine. And I think a lot of these are really good cards, honestly. So we'll have to just wait and see. But I do have some early impressions. I've tested a handful of different cards yeah, definitely have formulated some opinions about stuff. So we're going to dive right into it. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to register for PMPT number 25. Our 25th community tournament is happening this Saturday. And it is the first tournament running where all of these new Mega Shine cards are going to be legal. We're going to be live streaming it this weekend, as well as all of the other coverage that we're going to be doing tomorrow and on Friday before, of course, we get into this weekend's tournament. Also, before we get into, the set review, I got to let you know that we do have a new second YouTube channel. It's called Champion Mads, and we will be talking and covering Pokemon Champions content on that channel. My first video I have already uploaded, so go and check that out. Link to the Champion Mads channel will be down in the description below. All right, that being said, let's get into the set review. Not a ton of cards, so that, I don't want to spend an hour talking about these cards. So this might be a little bit of a quicker set review, but definitely some stuff to talk about. First of all, we have Scizor. Now, Scizor was revealed actually in the trailer, and I speculated that we would be getting a Mega Scizor card in Mega Shine. Turns out I might have been correct, but this Scizor card actually does synergize with Mega Scizor pretty well. This is a U-turn attack for 1 colorless energy, which is relevant because Scizor is a steel type card. So 1 colorless, 10 damage, and then you switch this to one of your bench Pokemon. Again, doesn't seem too crazy, but actually very relevant card, has good synergy with potentially Mega Scizor. I'm going to spoil it. There's a Mega Scizor in this set. Anyway. We have a new Pineco. We do have a new Fortress. Nothing to really talk about there. We do have a new Volbeat, Illumise. I don't know how to say the name of that Pokemon for some reason, but they kind of combo together. So Volbeat here, 10 damage and confusion, and then Illumise here does extra damage if your opponent's Pokemon is confused. Nothing too crazy there. Trevenant is one of these Pokemon where it has infinite damage potential off coin flips. So Rumble Stomp, 40 damage, flip a coin until you get tails. And then 40 more for each heads you get, right? So technically you can 1-hit KO anything in the game with Trevenant. Kind of crazy. If you really think about this card, it's way better than you might think. A card like this with Leaf Cape, with Lilligant's, you can make this thing survive forever with Erica's. And potentially just deal a ton of damage. This might be one of the better cards in the set. I guarantee you nobody will play this card, but it is actually quite strong. New Charmander and Charmeleon. I initially thought this card was a reprint because it still has the Ignition ability, but somebody corrected me in my chat and they said, Mads, this is not a reprint. In fact, the attack has been buffed on this Charmeleon card. That's right. Instead of doing 50 for 3 energies, we can now do 40 for 2 energies. But other than that, it's the same card with Ignition and I think the same amount of HP. It might have less HP, I forget. But a new Ignition Charmeleon is going to be really nice. Definitely the best Charmeleon in the game right now. And then, of course, we have Mega Charizard X. I actually uploaded a video today because I wanted to talk about something on the channel about Mega Charizard X. I think this card is very good. Still very, very slept on. I think people completely sleep on the fact that this is living a hit from basically every Pokemon in the game. And then with Rocky Helmet, you can come back and hit for 200 damage. That is going to 1-hit KO other Mega Pokemon. Mega Charizard is absolutely phenomenal. If you're playing Rocky Helmet and even Red here, you can hit up to 220 on the Revenge attack here with Raging Blaze. And that's if you don't come in and hit for 100 anyway. But the whole concept with Mega Charizard is you still play the Entei package, you play Flame Patch, you put some pressure on, hopefully, you deal enough damage with Entei so that when you do bring in Mega Charizard, you can finish up a KO or just KO whatever's in the active spot with that 100 damage attack. And then again, your opponent shouldn't be able to 1-hit KO you so that, the next time you attack, you're 1-hit KOing anything in your path, effectively guaranteeing that you win the game. Rocky Helmet, Mega Charizard, Entei, Flame Patch is going to be strong. I am confident in that. maybe I'm wrong. If I'm wrong, you guys can just flame me about it. But I feel pretty confidently that 200 damage and being able to live an attack is just really good. It's a stage 2 Pokemon. Sure, 3 energy attack cost. Sure. But with Flame Patch, with Entei, with Charmeleon, it's actually very easy to get this thing set up and rolling. So I very, very much like Mega Charizard X, and I talked about it earlier in today's video. I would heavily recommend it. We have a new Ponyta that burns, and then we also have a new Rapidash. And let's take a look here, because if you guys remember, like, we have Blaine. Blaine is a supporter card that, you know, boosts the damage of Rapidash by 30. This is a single energy stage 1 attack cost Pokemon, 100 HP, does 30 damage during your opponent's next turn, or during your next turn. This Pokemon's attack does 30 more damage. So you do 30, and then you do 60, and then with Blaine's you can do 90. So it's actually pretty aggressive. It's sort of like a new great way to play Blaine. I actually like this Rapidash card. Maybe Blaine comes back, maybe not. Either way, pretty interesting. I do quickly want to talk about Magmortar because there is a new archetype of Magmortar and Electivire. They both buff each other if one of the other is on the bench. One's fire type, one's lightning type. They're both stage 2 90X Pokemon. I think it's kind of niche. This reminds me of like the Nidoking, Nidoqueen from back in the day, but they're not both dark type. So I think in general, the deck is just worse. It's kind of cool. But anyway, nothing really to talk about there. Next up is Mega Slowbro. That's right. So again, I did sort of suspect that we would be getting Mega Slowbro. Again, in the trailer, they did show Slowpoke, so they kind of hinted at it a little bit. This card is awesome. This card is my favorite card in the new set. It's great for so many different ways, and I'm going to break it all down for you right here. Stage 1 Pokemon, Water type, 200 HP, retreat cost of 3. Okay, so because it's a water type, we have access to a ton of energy acceleration. We not only have Misty, but we also have Mantike, we have Manaphy, and we have Fion, the new Fion card. So tons and tons of ways to get water energy on Slowbro. That's not an issue whatsoever. This thing can get set up on turn 2 very easily because it's a stage 1 Pokemon. 200 HP is crazy. It's crazy on a stage 1 Pokemon. This thing is super, super tanky. Not only that, you have access to Irida if you want to play it, but you also can play things like Pokemon Center Lady, and of course, Lucky Ice Pop. That's right. This is going to be a Pokemon that you play. The Heavy Helmet, Lucky Ice Pop combination. Mega Slowbro is going to be so annoying to deal with. So much HP. You have the damage reduction of Heavy Helmet. You have the healing, of course, of Lucky Ice Pop. You can play PCL, Pokemon Center Lady, or you can play Irida in this deck list. You can make Mega Slowbro extremely tanky. Very easy to play this thing, to be not only consistent, but very hard to 2-hit KO. It's very hard to 2-hit KO a Mega Slowbro. It's almost impossible. A Heavy Helmet Mega Slowbro with Lucky Ice Pops and in a PCL or something, almost impossible to 2-hit KO this thing. Which leads me into the attack of Mega Slowbro, which, by the way, I actually love this attack. 2 water energies and a colorless laundry go round is the attack name. 90 damage to the active Pokemon, and we flip 3 coins. This attack also does 20 damage for each heads to each of your opponent's benched Pokemon. That's right. If we pop off and we flip 3 heads after we attack, not only are we dealing 90 to the active, but we're dealing 60 to every single one of your opponent's bench Pokemon. If your opponent has a full bench, that's 180 plus 90 is 270 total damage. And even if we flip 2 heads here, that's 40 times 3, that's 120 plus 90, that's 210 total damage. Mega Slowbro EX is absolutely phenomenal. This attack, although it is coin flips, even if you flip 1 or 2 heads, is an absolutely broken attack in a deck that plays, again, if your opponent plays any bench Pokemon, it's going to be really good. Mega Slowbro will struggle into a couple of different things. You are going to have to tech something for the Oricorio matchup. That is, of course, if your opponent decides to bench any number of Pokemon that can get KO'd, that add up to 3 prizes. That doesn't include Oricorio, then they can just lose anyway. But all of that aside, this deck is going to struggle specifically into decks with Protective Poncho and or those Indeedee Heavy Helmet decks that are also like Slowbro, right? So if you're going up against like Mega Steelix, you might struggle. You're gonna have to play Guzma because your only way to get through a Mega Steelix is in fact actually just gonna be KOing the Indeedees on the bench. So those things are kind of common in the metagame. Poncho is relevant, but again, just play Guzma with Mega Slowbro and you can win games that way. Quite frankly, Heavy Helmet, Lucky Ice Pops, Irida, PCL, even Mega Slowbro, even a Mega Steelix might not 3-hit KO you, and Mega Steelix takes like 4 turns to get set up. So Mega Slowbro can come out on turn 2, sweep through your opponent's bench, incredible amount of HP, very tanky, tons of damage, way more damage than you might think. 90 seems like not a lot, but it's really not that bad. Dealing 2 attacks and hitting for 180 damage is going to be enough to KO most things. Unfortunately, not Mega Altaria, but again, we don't need to go through Mega Altaria to beat Mega Altaria. We just go through all of their bench Pokemon. That's what Mega Slowbro does. It's actually insane. It's a very, very strong Pokemon. One of my favorites. I don't know if it'll be like the best card in the set, but definitely not a bad card. I think this is by far the best water-type Pokemon Mega Evolution that we have in the game so far. Very, very cool. Shout out to Mega Slowbro. I absolutely love it. That was a tangent. Here's the new Fion. This also was announced in the reveal trailer. But it's basically a mix between, it's like the in-between of Manaphy. So it does 10 damage instead of no damage, has a little more HP, which means you can't grab it with Lycia, but it's 1 energy to attach an additional energy. It's like Orthworm. This is basically Orthworm, but retreat cost of 1. I don't know if I like Fion more than Manaphy, but it is interesting. Definitely is somewhat interesting. Here is the Electivire. So this does 50, 70 more if Magmortar is on your bench. This is only 1 lightning energy and then 1 colorless. Now, again, we do have Elemental Switch, we do have Magby, we do have Pichu, so this archetype does have some potential. I just don't know if I don't know if I think it's that good. Anyway, we also have Mega Manectric. That's right, this came out of left field here. Mega Manectric is a very interesting Mega Pokemon. 180 HP, also a stage 1. So very consistent. This card is very easy to get set up. We know how easy it is to generate additional lightning energies. Also free retreat. So you can't sleep on the free retreat. If you can evolve this thing turn 2 going first, you can just retreat for free. And you never really have to attach to it if you want to set something else up. Mega Manectric here, 180 HP. It is weak to fighting, which doesn't really matter in this metagame, which is nice. But it has the attack Lightning Accelerator for 2 lightning energies, does 80 damage. And this attack does 30 more for each point you have gotten. So they're kind of telling you Mega Manectric is a late game Pokemon. This is something you bring in the end of, sorry, I can't even talk. At the end of the game. Jeez Louise, it's too late. At the end of the game to kind of sweep through your opponent. So if you have taken 2 prizes, Manectric will do 140 damage for 2 lightning energy, similar to Bellibolt. And if you've only taken 1 prize, then it does 110, which is still kind of fine for 2 energies. I think this is actually a pretty decent Pokemon. I don't think you would ever build a deck specifically around Mega Manectric, but it is a Pokemon that you can throw into most decks because it's pretty low impact, very easy to get 2 energies on this thing. Again, you can just play it as like a one-of. Like, think about Magnezone or Oricorio at the moment plays a 1-1 Bellibolt lineup. You could just play a 1-1 Manectric lineup. Then there you go. It's effectively the same thing as Bellibolt, but sometimes even better. So I think that's kind of how we're supposed to play Mega Manectric. You could play this like with Bellibolt. You could go Bellibolt into Mega Manectric, which could be kind of interesting. You could also play it with like just Oricorio in a different type of deck. You could play with maybe Tapu Koko. You could play with Raikou. You could play it with so many different ways. There's a ton of strong lightning Pokemon. The one thing to note about Mega Manectric is that it seems weak, but if this is just a Pokemon that you bring in to end the game, similar to Absol. Think about this as like you play it just like you would play Absol, except Absol's a basic, but Mega Manectric is just a stage 1 Pokemon that can kind of come in, live a hit, and hit for 140 a couple of times, right? Definitely not bad. Not a bad Pokemon whatsoever. Again, a lot of these Mega Pokemon are like very complex in nature, but that doesn't mean they're not bad, or doesn't mean they're not good. Like, this is definitely a totally fine card. I could see this seeing play in Oricorio Magnezone very easily, being extremely, extremely strong in those given scenarios. Like, now instead of like Bellibolt and of course needing 4 energies on the board, like you can just play Mega Manectric, have 2 more HP or 20 more HP and deal more damage, like the same amount of damage for only 2 energies. Like, it's pretty relevant. Also, free retreat gives it much less high impact in the sense that if you do lead off with this, you can just retreat for free, which is always really nice, right? So definitely not a bad card. A very, very nice card, but again, kind of specific as to where we're going to play this. Next up is Drowzee. This is awesome. We are finally getting a buff to the original Hypno from back in Genetic Apex, the Hypno that had the ability to sometimes put your opponent to sleep. The thing about Drowzee here in Hypno is that there's a bunch of new cards that do have some sleep synergy. There's this new sort of sleep Darkrai deck, which we'll talk about. But Drowzee's really cool. 1 colorless Hypnosis. This is basically Sleep Swablu, but you have 10 more HP. So you can't grab it with Lycia, but it can evolve into Hypno, which is, again, able to put your opponent to sleep on the bench. So this is actually a really nice card for Hypno. This new Hypno card is not very relevant, but we do have a new Mew, and this is the Immersive for the set, the Immersive card. What's cool actually about this Mew is that the Immersive has a shiny version. It's the first time we've seen a shiny Immersive card. Anyway, this Mew is very interesting. It is a 50 HP basic Pokemon, meaning you can grab it with Lycia, and it's got a Psychic and a Colorless energy in the attack cost, Miraculous, memory. One attack from among the Pokemon in your opponent's hand and deck is chosen at random, and you use the chosen attack as this attack. This could be absurd. Like, I don't think I need to mention it to anybody how crazy this Mew could be, but you got to keep in mind, it's only Pokemon that are in your opponent's hand and or deck. So if they have that opponent on the board, then you cannot copy that Pokemon's attack. It's also random, so if your opponent doesn't have a strong attack Pokemon, or it's just a strong attack somewhere in the deck, it's not going to be that relevant. But keep in mind, all Mega Pokemon just have a strong attack. Like, most of them don't have more than one attack, so like against Mega decks, this Mew card is going to be kind of interesting. There might be some crazy shenanigans. Like, this card could just open up turn 1, turn 2, rather, and win the game, which is interesting to say the least. You could also one colorless, so you could just turbo this thing with a baby Pokemon, which is always hilarious. This is not a bad card. I don't know if people will play it, but it's definitely very, very interesting. Very interesting. If we go down here, nothing else too super relevant. We've talked about Mega Gengar. It was announced in the trailer. And yes, so we have a new Ghastly, which has 60 HP. There's no reason to ever play this over just the 50 HP Ghastly that you can grab with Licia, and also has a colorless attack cost. And then this is Haunter. So this is the Dark type Haunter. Not a terrible card, but not what we wanted. There's no Dark type energy ramp for Gengar. Thank God, quite frankly, because Gengar would be absolutely insane if you could get it out on turn 3. But it's a turn 4 card, sometimes turn 5. And we'll talk about Gengar. I don't think it's that good. But we do have this Haunter with Spin Turn, does 40 damage for 2, and then you swap this with one of your benched Pokemon. This does allow you to maybe play like Memory Light Gengar if you wanted to, but for the most part, I think this is fine. Like, if you do end up leading Haunter, you can just sort of get an attack off and then retreat to the bench for the next couple of turns to get the extra 2 energies on board. I think the main issue with Gengar is like, how are we going to stop our opponent from getting fully set up in the first 4 or 5 turns of the game? Like, you can't really stop your opponent from doing that while also committing all of your energies to Gengar. Like, that's the primary issue of it. This Haunter isn't terrible, but it's not great. And again, no dark energy acceleration available in Pokemon Pocket. So if you want to play Gengar, you're going to have to just manually attach these dark energies, because those 3 dark, there's no real way to do that other than maybe playing something like Hydreigon and Dawn. But that's going to be really tough. A massive combo with multiple Stage 2 Pokemon and Dawn, rare candies and stuff. It's just going to be really difficult to do that. Also, you could play a baby Pokemon in this deck if you really wanted to, supplement that non-dark energy. Technically, it is possible to get Gengar up and running on turn 2. Just extremely unlikely. You would need Gengar in the active. Well, you would need a baby Pokemon turn 1 attached to, so you would need a baby Pokemon turn 1, accelerate it to Ghastly, get Hydreigon and Gengar out on turn 2, retreat into Gengar, Dawn, into the game, Dawn, then I also have Dawn to get the energy on Gengar. It's not going to happen. I don't think Gengar is a weak Pokemon. I think this is a very strong Pokemon, but unfortunately, every other deck in the game is going to get like fully set up by turn 4 or turn 5, which means that the solo Gengar, probably even with the incredible effect, is just not going to be enough to win games, I don't think. It's just not very likely. That's my thought. Maybe this ends up being relevant because the effect is so strong, but I don't really see it with Gengar. I think a lot of people were hoping to get some more support for this card particularly, but spoiler, there's really nothing in the game for this other than Morpeko, which really isn't also a good card. And we've talked about that. This Morpeko card is just not going to do it, unfortunately. Next up is this new Darkrai card. This is a very interesting card. A lot of people have been testing with this. This has the Bad Dreams ability. Basic, retreat cost of 2, Dark type, 100 HP, weak to grass. It also has the attack, 3 colorless, 40 damage, put your opponent to sleep. But the Bad Dreams ability is very good. This is a very, very good ability. At the end of each turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon is asleep, deal 20 damage to that Pokemon. This effect does stack. If you have double Darkrai on the board, if you put your opponent to sleep, they will take 40 damage. Which is crazy. Now, it's important to note that this Bad Dream ability will proc before you even flip a coin to break out of sleep, because that's just how it works. So if your opponent does put you to sleep with Swablu or Hypno or Drowzee or Igglybuff, whatever it might be, you're going to take that damage, and then you're going to flip a coin to break out of the sleep. So basically, anytime you put your opponent to sleep, the damage will be guaranteed. And then, of course, if they fail to break out of sleep, then they will deal an additional 20 or 40 damage on the end of their next turn, which is really strong. So this is actually a really strong ability. Lots of extra damage. You can play this with Igglybuff, which puts your opponent to sleep and also does 10 damage. Or you could play Drowzee and Hypno, or you could also play Sleep Swablu. This is honestly a really cool card. This is actually a really strong card. Kind of a slept-on card. So it's going to be quite annoying to play like Sleep decks now, taking 20 to 40 damage every turn. You can even play this with Darkrai EX and deal 60 damage per turn and put your opponent to sleep. If you're playing Igglybuff, like it's actually kind of nuts. I'm just going to be completely honest with you. The main downside to Darkrai is, of course, is if you lead off with it, right? Because it's not going to be able to do anything. So you're going to want to play like multiple copies of Leaf in your deck if you're playing double Darkrai. But definitely not a bad card. The sleep decks are going to be pretty toxic, really strong into other baby Pokemon. And sometimes enough to KO basics, which is kind of crazy. You can technically go turn 150 damage and sleep with double Darkrai. And Igglybuff, crazy. Morpeko's not a good card. We talked about it in the trailer video. New Zoroark, Energy Crush, 20 damage, 20 more for each energy attached to all of your opponent's Pokemon. Not a terrible card, but not something that would see it that much play. We do have a new Fortress, Enormous Explosion. 100 damage, also does 100 damage to itself and 50 damage to all benched Pokemon. That's right. So if you can get 3 Steel Energies on this thing, it KOs itself, but it does 100 to the active and 50 to all bench Pokemon, which is absolutely hilarious. Not a good card. Next up, though, let's talk about Mega Scizor, one of my favorite new cards here. This thing is also quite strong. Steel type, 200 HP, stage 1 Pokemon. So again, 200 HP, stage 1, and we have access to Metal Core Barrier and Lucky Ice Pops and stuff. So another Pokemon that's going to be extremely annoying to deal with. And it has just one very simple attack here for double Steel and 1 colorless Bullet Slugger, 100 damage. If this Pokemon moved from your bench to your active spot this turn, this attack does 50 more damage. Now, spoiler, there is a card that has released to be played exactly with Mega Scizor, alongside Mega Scizor, to utilize, the effect here of Bullet Stinger. 150 damage is a decent amount, quite honestly. You can play Training Arena, and then you're hitting for 160. 160 is strong. So this is kind of the in-between something like a Mega Steelix and like, I don't know, something else. So it's definitely quicker and more consistent than Mega Steelix, a little bit less tanky, but a lot more damage as well. This is a very, very good card, and I'll tell you why. Because also check out Kartana. So the Grass type Kartana has now been reprinted as a Steel type Pokemon, which does 40 damage for 1 Metal Energy. Honestly, not bad, and like kind of a fun card to have. But anyway, Revavroom, that's right. Revavroom is the partner for Scizor for a really fun deck. It reminds me of Buzzwole. It's basically the new Buzzwole deck, and I think that's pretty cool. Revavroom, stage 1 as well, Steel type, 110 HP, 60 damage. For 2 energies, this is relevant because, again, with a Training Arena, you are 1 at KOing Oricorio. So the deck immediately has an Oricorio answer, which is really nice. And you can also Metal Core Barrier this thing to be really tanky as well. But the ability, Metal Transport, once during your turn, you may switch your active Metal Pokemon with one of your benched Pokemon. So it's effectively Celesteela / Greninja EX. It's the same thing. Yeah, it works perfectly for Steelix. If you have double Revavroom, you can, or not Steelix, Scizor. I'm gonna make that mistake a lot. Works really well with Mega Scizor. So if you have double Revavroom, you can double Pivot. Or, of course, you can play Orthworm. So, like, if Orthworm is your lead, not only is it generating energies for Steelix, but also you can just sort of pivot that turn and then just do multiple different pivots. It's actually pretty decent. I really like Revavroom. It has a retreat cost of 3, so, like, the double pivot stuff is going to be difficult unless, of course, you have double Revavroom. But if you have enough energies on Steelix, you can just retreat and then, of course, Metal Transport. So you can double pivot even with 1 Revavroom. You just have to pay the retreat cost, which, again, isn't that bad. So really, really fun. It's a really nice, fun combo to be a tanky deck that can consistently hit for 150 to 160 basically every turn. And again, Metal Core Barrier, if you're playing a couple of them in the deck, it becomes very difficult to 2-hit KO Mega Scizor. Like, very difficult. Really, really fun deck. Really cool. It is weak to fire, which is tough. So, certain fire decks, they are going to be able to 2-hit KO you, but most things in the game are going to struggle. A very, very fun card. I love this entire new package. One of my favorite new packages and archetypes in the game is Revavroom Steelix. Very, very cool. Or I said Steelix again. It's Mega Scizor. And again, as we saw with Scyther here in U-turn, pretty cool. So that we can immediately get Scyther. We can attach a Steel Energy to it, attack for 10, and then retreat to the bench, go into our Orthworm, and then pivot back in to hit for 150, 160 later in the game. It's really fun. It works really, really well. Also, Revavroom is just really good for anything that's even not Mega Scizor. Like, most Steel-type Pokemon have a high retreat cost because they're tanky Pokemon. So Revavroom's going to be actually just be really nice for any steel type deck, specifically really, really good for Orthworm, because the issue with Orthworm is you couldn't control when you wanted to get it out of the active. Like your opponent could just sort of set up and then just sort of do nothing. Like that was sort of the issue with Golden Go. Now with Revavroom, once you're done and you've used Orthworm to set up Mega Scizor, you can just choose to get out of the active, which is a really, really big deal. So yeah, Orthworm, Mega Scizor, Revavroom, a very, very, very strong combo. One of my favorite things that they've added to the game. We did get a new Dragonite with the new Dragonair, which we talked about with Sky's Blessing. I don't know how many people will be retesting Dragonite and trying it out, but we do have Dragonair in this new Dragonite, which does 150, but you discard a Water and a Lightning, which is really tough, quite frankly, but definitely not a terrible card, I guess. I think I would still rather play the other, like the OG Dragonite with the bench damage. We've talked about Haxorus before. This card is really not good. It's really tough to get a fighting and a steel energy on this, but there is a new supporter card that buffs Haxorus specifically, and it is kind of broken. We'll talk about it. New Druddigon, 40 damage, can't retreat for 2 colorless. Nothing too crazy. Jigglypuff, Wigglytuff, and then of course we have Route Miltank, the legend himself here. 10 damage, 20 more for damage for each of your opponent's benched Pokemon for 2 energies, 2 colorless, 110 HP. I mean, it's not a terrible Pokemon, but not something I would play. New Chatot here, which does 10 and draws a card. We have Minccino and Cinccino, nothing relevant. We do have this new Furfrou, which is the last Pokemon, coincidentally, that we'll talk about. Nothing too crazy. Minus 20 from attacks, 80 HP. Double colorless, 40. Flip a coin if heads does 20 more. I would still probably rather play the single energy 30 damage Furfrou, but we do have yet another Furfrou in the game. All right, now let's talk about the new trainer cards here to wrap up this video. The first one is a doozy. That's right, this is Nasty Notice, and this card is nasty. It's an item card. Your opponent discards cards from their hand until they have 4 cards in their hand. This is a really big deal. You need to understand this is a discard and not shuffle back into the deck. So very comparable to something like a red card, which again says that your opponent shuffles their cards into their deck and then they draw 3. So it's one more card than red card, but it's discarding. It's discarding instead of shuffling, which is again a very, very, very big deal. This card is crazy. Specifically, really, really good in Chingling decks. I think that Chingling Nasty Notice is going to be insane, and this does have good synergy with Gengar. I did test that on the stream. It didn't seem good enough, because again, Gengar 4 energies, it's kind of tough. But Nasty Notice Chingling is nuts. You can effectively force your opponent throughout those first 2 Chinglings to discard like 3, 4, sometimes 5, 6 cards from their hands across multiple turns. I do think Nasty Notice is going to be better when you're playing it with Chingling and Item Lock or anything like that, but I don't think it's going to be better than Red Card in any other scenario. It is going to have decent synergy with Copycat, so you could Copycat a big hand, draw into Nasty Notice, and then force your opponent to discard those cards. It is important to note that this is not random. Your opponent will be able to choose which cards they discard, but that doesn't mean this card isn't good. You only have 20 cards in your deck. Most Pokemon Pocket decks have 20 cards that they need in order to win games. And if your opponent is forced to discard 3, 4, 5 cards during a match, that could potentially be a lot of different win conditions for them. This is a very, very good card. Anything that plays Jingling is going to love this. I'm really curious to see like high roll control with Greninja and Darkrai, how this plays with Nasty Notice, even Altaria. Honestly, I think this is an absolutely insane card. Maybe it doesn't see any play. I don't know. You can play around this, but it is definitely a very punishing card if you don't have a way to play around it. A very, very good card. It's absolutely going to decimate decks that just brick. Like rare candy decks are going to hate this. They're going to hate Chingling Nasty Notice because they're going to have hands where they have like 6 evolution Pokemon in hand and no rare candy, or double rare candy and no stage 2 Pokemon, and they're going to be forced to just discard some stuff and they're going to hate it. So Nasty Notice, a very interesting card. Another card that is coming is Maintenance, and on the other side of the spectrum, this card is strange, but kind of a counter card to Nasty Notice. So it's interesting that they gave us counterplay to Nasty Notice in Maintenance. This is an item card as well. Shuffle 2 cards from your hand into your deck and then draw a card. That's what the card does. So it's -2 card advantage, but it's basically a way to not only see a random card or draw a card, but put 2 cards that you don't need back into your deck. It is a card, so you have to play it and discard it to play it, which effectively means this is a -2 card advantage card, which on paper means this card is terrible. But again, it is specifically, I think, here to be played if Nasty Notice were to just completely take over the metagame. You could play Maintenance and control your hand size so that you don't get punished or discard cards from Nasty Notice. That is the only reason I could ever think of playing Maintenance, quite frankly. I think Nasty Notice is going to be really relevant. I don't think anyone's ever going to play Maintenance. That's my my first impression. We have 2 new supporter cards. One is Iris. And again, guys, let's read this. During this turn, if your opponent's active Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack used by your Haxorus, you get 1 more point. That's right. We have prize cheating or point cheating in Pokemon Pocket now. Luckily, Haxorus, as we talked about, is a very rough card. It's going to be really tough to KO anything with Haxorus, quite frankly. But if you do manage to do so, you can win the game in 1 attack. That's right. You can KO an Indeedee EX and then win the game, because if you play Iris, if you KO a 2-prize Pokemon, you take 3 prizes. If you KO an Oricorio, you take 2 prizes. This is actually something that could make Haxorus somewhat playable. I don't think so, because it is a combo. It's a stage 2 Pokemon with a tough attack cost, doesn't deal a ton of damage, and then you have to play a supporter with it. But it is really funny. It's kind of crazy that we have something like this in the game. Maybe something like this pops off. Maybe Haxorus is worth it with Iris. I don't know. But we'll have to just wait and see, because it is very interesting. But yeah, that's all I have to say about that. We talked about Calem. I don't know if Calem will ever see play. You draw a card for each Mega Evolution in play. I think that it could be a decent card late in the game, especially if the metagame becomes only or mostly Mega Pokemon, which might be the case this season, honestly. I don't know if Calem will even find its way maybe as a one-of, but I think you would almost always rather play things like Copycat, just for the fact that it's a more useful card more often. But if you're playing multiple Mega Pokemon in your deck, then maybe this is relevant, right? Because theoretically, you could draw a bunch of cards with Calem. It's just most decks only have like 1, maybe 2 Mega Pokemon on the board. Some decks don't have any. So unless you're playing a deck with a bunch of Mega Pokemon, I don't think Calem's really worth it. But it is support for Mega Pokemon, which is cool. Lastly is Hiking Trail, a stadium card. At the end of each player's turn, that player draws cards until they have 3 cards in their hand. This is actually a strong stadium, but again, it's like Mesagosa in the sense that your opponent will also get the effect. So you're going to want to play this in decks that are just all about thinning out their hand, right? And there are decks like that. There used to be like Fossil decks. You can build decks in a way to basically have all playable cards in your hand, and then this will end your turn by drawing 3, which is very powerful. Most decks, most times you're playing your opponent, they're not going to be sitting there with no cards in their hand. It just doesn't happen very often unless you Mars them to 1 or something. So Hiking Trail, unless you're playing a deck that specifically is all about kind of clearing out your hand, it's not going to be that relevant, and I don't think it's going to see that much play or have that much use, but it is a very interesting stadium card, and it likely will have synergy with something or another at some point. We just kind of have to wait and see what that ends up being. And that's it. That's the set. I know it's a small set. Some of these cards here don't seem that crazy, but honestly, guys, like, I really like Mega Manectric. I think it's going to be nice in certain decks. You know, the Drowzee upgrade to Hypno is cool. You know, this new Mew is very interesting. Gengar, unfortunately, I don't think is that good, but the new Sleep Bad Dreams Darkrai is very interesting. Scizor Revavroom is a super cool new archetype that I think is going to be really strong. And if we go back up, of course, we have Mega Slowbro, which I love, and I actually think has a lot more potential than you might think at first glance. And then, of course, Mega Charizard X, which I really just think is a strong card. And that's kind of the set. So, like, to me, like, 4 new strong Pokemon, all Megas, and I think 3 of these are going to be their own standalone deck. Like, I think Slowbro is going to be a strong deck. Charizard's going to be strong, and I think that Scizor is going to be really strong. All of those are viable options, and I think Manectric is going to see a lot of play in some specific lightning type decks. I think it probably will replace Bellybolt in Magnezone or Oricorio. Maybe, maybe not. We'll have to see, but definitely not a bad card. Other than that, that's the set, guys. That is the expansion here. That is Mega Shine. This is what we get for the next month. Should be fun. Nasty Notice, I'm a little bit afraid of. I'll be honest. Also, these are all of the full arts, and of course, all of the Megas got full arts, but some of them got rainbow rares. And then look at this. Here's the shiny Immersive Mew. That's right. I did pull one of the Immersive Mews, and I also pulled a God Pack on the live stream, so shout out to me. But there is also a shiny Immersive, which is crazy. I want to pull that card. And then also, all of the Megas got shinies, which is cool. The crown rares for the set are Arboliva and Metalcore Barrier, which is random. But anyway, there it is. That's the set, guys. Comment down below. Let me know what you guys think. I know immediately there's going to be a ton of people that say this set sucks and that it's not very good. I think the people that say that are almost always wrong. There's always going to be at least a couple of cards that are relevant. We're just going to have to wait and see to find out what those cards are. Honestly, who knows? We're going to have to wait and see. But I think a lot of these things are actually quite good and fun. Honestly, all of these new cards are just going to be fun to play with, which I think is pretty cool. Other than Gengar. RIP Gengar. I know everybody's favorite Pokemon from the set probably, but I wouldn't play Gengar. I really wouldn't. I'm sorry. Anyway, guys, that's the video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Don't forget to play in PMPT number 25 this weekend. Link to register down in the description below. And I'll see you guys tomorrow and Friday for more coverage of all of these new cards and as the meta develops. All right, guys. Peace out. Bye.